I'm Rachel, I'm 34. And the night my brother tried to murder me, I climbed out of a burning attic window, crossed a roof I'd known since childhood, and watched him watch the flames, believing he'd finally won. This is a story about fire, the kind that destroys houses, and the kind that forges something harder from whoever survives it. It's about letting someone believe they've buried you, while you learn to walk through walls. Welcome to Little Bunny Stories, where we tell quiet stories about families, about the homes we build and the homes we burn, and about the strength it takes to rise from ash as something no one expected. If a story ever made you feel less alone, that's why we're here. Drop a comment, hit subscribe, and let's walk through this one together. Here's my story. The first time Travis threatened to burn the farm, I was 16. He was 20, drunk on stolen whiskey, standing in the kitchen with a lighter in one hand and our father's deed in the other. "I could end it all," he said, the flame dancing close to the paper. "End this place, end the debt, and everything Dad worked for." I didn't call the police. I didn't tell our father, dying slowly upstairs from the emphysema that would take him 2 years later. I just took the lighter from Travis's hand, gently, the way you disarm a child, and led him to the barn where he passed out in the hay. In the morning, he didn't remember, or pretended not to. That was Travis, threats that evaporated with sobriety, violence that left no marks, a talent for destruction that never quite crossed the line into consequences. I should have seen the pattern. Should have recognized that a man who threatens to burn your home at 20 will probably try again at 32, when the stakes are higher and his desperation deeper. But I was trained to save people, not to suspect them. 8 years as a firefighter paramedic in rural Montana, responding to car accidents and kitchen fires and the occasional meth lab explosion, had taught me to look for victims, not villains. To assume the best, to rush toward danger, to believe that everyone deserves a second chance. Even the brother who'd stolen from our father, lied to my face, and threatened to destroy everything we owned. The farm was 340 acres of marginal land in Flathead County, Montana, hayfields, a small orchard, the white clapboard house our great-grandfather built in 1923. Hank, our father, had kept it running through sheer stubbornness, working double shifts at the lumber mill to cover the mortgage, refusing to sell even when developers offered prices that would have changed our lives. "Land is memory," he'd say, coughing into his handkerchief. "You sell memory, you become a ghost." He left the farm to both of us, 50/50, the lawyer reading the will while Travis fidgeted and I tried not to cry. "Equal shares," the lawyer said. "Requires both signatures for any sale." Travis wanted to sell immediately. The land was worth nearly $1 million to developers building vacation homes for Californians fleeing wildfires. I wanted to keep it, to farm it, to honor the memory that Hank had spent his life protecting. We fought for 3 years, lawyers, mediation, screaming matches that ended with Travis throwing a chair through the kitchen window and me bandaging his hand afterward, the way I'd always done. "You could buy me out," he said 100 times. "You're the one with the job, the savings, the hero complex. Pay me my half and do whatever you want with Dad's precious dirt." I didn't have $500,000, and even if I had, I wouldn't have given it to Travis. Not because I begrudged him his share, but because I knew what would happen to it. Debts, mostly gambling debts from the casino in Missoula, loan shark debts from men who didn't send polite letters. Travis had been borrowing against his inheritance for years, signing papers with our father's forged signature, promising collateral he didn't own. The farm was the last asset standing between him and something worse than poverty. I didn't know how much worse until October 14th. I woke to the smell of gasoline, not the faint whiff of a lawnmower or the distant reminder of a gas station. Concentrated, deliberate, the sharp chemical scent that every firefighter recognizes before they see flames. I was asleep in my childhood bedroom, the room over the kitchen, the one with the window that stuck in summer and rattled in winter, and the smell pulled me awake like a hand around my throat. Smoke. Not visible yet, but present in the air. The particulate matter that reaches your lungs before your eyes confirm what your body already knows. Fire, close. Moving. I rolled out of bed, landed on hands and knees, the training taking over before conscious thought could intervene. Stay low. Check doors for heat. Identify exits. The bedroom door was warm to the touch, not hot, not yet, but warming. The fire was below, in the kitchen or the living room, climbing the staircase that was my primary escape route. I went to the window. Stuck as always. I grabbed the baseball bat I kept beside the bed, not for intruders, for this exact scenario, and smashed the frame. Glass shattered outward, cold October air rushing in, feeding the fire below with oxygen it didn't need. I heard the whoosh, the sound of combustion accelerating, the hungry roar of a structure fire finding its stride. I was barefoot, in pajamas, no time for shoes or a coat. I climbed onto the roof, the shingles rough against my palms, the slope steeper than I remembered from childhood adventures. The barn was 20 feet away, its roof slightly lower than the house. Between them a gap of maybe 6 feet, nothing at ground level, but at roof height, with fire behind and darkness below, it looked like a canyon. I jumped. Landed hard, rolled, felt something tear in my ankle but kept moving. The barn roof was metal, slick with dew, cold enough to burn my bare feet. I slid down the slope, caught the edge, dropped to the hay pile below. 8 feet, maybe 10. I hit rolled, came up limping but alive, then I turned around, and I saw him, Travis, standing in the driveway 50 yards away, silhouetted against the flames consuming our home. He wasn't running, wasn't calling for help. Wasn't doing anything except watching, his hands in his pockets, his posture relaxed, almost satisfied. His truck was parked up the road, lights off, engine ticking as it cooled. He'd been there long enough to watch it start. He thought I was inside. The realization hit me like cold water. He wasn't just watching the fire. He was watching for me, waiting to see if I'd escape, if his plan had worked, if the problem named Rachel had finally been solved by flame. I was supposed to be asleep, trapped, consumed. The gasoline on the porch, I'd smelled it from my window, was meant to ensure I never made it downstairs. The old house, dry wood, no sprinkler system, rural location 20 minutes from the nearest station. By the time anyone arrived, there'd be nothing left but ash and bones. He thought I was dying in there, and he was waiting to confirm it. I should have called out. Should have limped toward him, screaming, letting him see me alive, shattering his satisfaction before it fully formed. That's what victims do, they reveal themselves, demand justice, confront their attackers with the evidence of survival. But I didn't. I stood in the shadow of the barn, barefoot and bleeding, watching my brother watch our home burn, and I felt something I hadn't expected. Not fear, not rage, clarity. The same clarity that comes in the middle of a structure fire, when the smoke is thick and the heat is pressing and every decision is life or death. I saw the whole pattern, suddenly, completely, the years of threats, the escalating desperation, the forged signatures and borrowed money, the way he'd stopped asking me to sell and started demanding, the way his eyes had changed from frustrated to something harder, more final. He wanted me gone. Not just out of the house, not just off the farm. Gone. Permanently. And he'd finally found a method that would look like tragedy, like an accident, like the sad fate of a rural farmhouse with faulty wiring and a daughter who should have known better. I stepped deeper into the barn's shadow, and I disappeared. The fire department arrived 23 minutes after I called 911 from a payphone at the crossroads, 2 miles away, my voice disguised, my location vague. Farm fire on Route 9, I said. I think someone's inside. I hung up before they could ask more. I watched from the tree line as they fought the blaze. Travis had discovered the fire by then, was playing the frantic brother, trying to rescue me, being held back by firefighters who didn't know the house was already beyond saving. I saw him cry. Real tears or good performances with Travis, I'd never been able to tell the difference. They found the remains the next morning. Not human remains, I'd made sure of that. But bones, yes. A deer carcass my father had buried in the cellar years ago, poorly, shallowly, the kind of thing that surfaces during foundation work or, apparently, after a fire exposes the dirt beneath the floorboards. I'd moved more dirt over it the week before. Landscaping. I'd told Travis, preparing for spring planting. Really, I'd been creating evidence. A body that would be found, identified as animal but initially suspected as human. Enough to support a narrative of death by fire, enough to delay identification, enough to let Travis believe he'd succeeded. I didn't plan it that way. Not consciously, but some part of me, the part that had listened to Travis's threats for 16 years, that had watched him forge our father's name, that had cleaned up his messes and bandaged his wounds, some part of me had been preparing for this moment without admitting it to myself. The coroner ruled death presumed after 3 days. Dental records were inconclusive. I'd conveniently lost my records in an office flood 2 years prior, never replaced them. Travis identified my remains based on a ring I'd worn, a family heirloom that I'd left on the bathroom sink the night before the fire. He was convincing. Grief-stricken. The grieving brother who tried to save his sister but arrived too late. He collected the insurance, $400,000 on the house, another $200,000 on the accidental death rider I'd added 6 months earlier, the policy he'd signed off on because it's your money, Ratch. You handle the paperwork. He inherited the land, sole owner now, free to sell without my signature blocking him. He paid off his debts, or some of them, bought a new truck, took his girlfriend to Hawaii, and I watched. From a cabin 30 miles north, rented under a false name, paid in cash. From a night job bartending at a casino in Missoula, where I learned more about Travis's gambling habits than I'd ever wanted to know. From phone calls to his creditors, anonymous tips about where to find him when he'd have cash, what his patterns were. I was dead legally. Officially. A ghost with a bank account. Being dead is liberating in ways I hadn't expected. No more shifts at the fire station, though I missed the work, the camaraderie, the satisfaction of saving something from destruction. No more small-town recognition, the "Hey Rachel" at the grocery store, the expectations of who I was supposed to be. I was nobody now, a woman with dyed hair and a fake name, tending bar for tips, living in a cabin with no neighbors, watching my brother destroy himself from a distance I controlled. Travis didn't sell the land immediately. He tried, listed it with 3 different realtors, each one dropping him when the title search revealed liens he hadn't disclosed, debts he'd hidden, legal complications from our father's estate that I'd carefully constructed before the fire. I hadn't just been preparing for survival. I'd been preparing for this. The slow strangulation of Travis's options, the narrowing of his paths, the inevitable desperation that would make him vulnerable to exactly what I planned. I bought his debts. Not personally, through shell companies, intermediaries, the kind of financial structures that are perfectly legal and completely untraceable. The gambling markers in Missoula. The loan shark paper in Billings. The credit card consolidation he'd been paying minimums on for years. I bought them all, pennies on the dollar, and I held them. Waited. Watched Travis's credit score collapse, his relationships fray, his girlfriend leave when the Hawaii trip turned out to be funded by bounced checks. He tried to sell the land again, this time to a developer from California who didn't care about liens, just wanted the acreage for a hunting retreat. The price was half what it was worth, $500,000 for 340 acres of Montana farmland, the kind of deal that only happens when the seller is desperate and the buyer is predatory. I bought it. Through a Wyoming LLC, using the insurance money I'd collected on my own death, the policies Travis didn't know existed because I'd never told him, the savings I'd built during 8 years of firefighter overtime. I paid cash, closed in 30 days, and became the owner of the land my great-grandfather had homesteaded, the land Travis had tried to steal by murdering me. He never knew it was me. The LLC was anonymous, the intermediary a lawyer in Cheyenne who'd never met me, the transaction routine. Travis got his $500,000, paid off enough debts to stop the immediate bleeding, and thought he'd finally won. He bought a condo in Missoula. Threw a party, posted on social media about new beginnings and leaving the past behind. I let him celebrate, let him believe the nightmare was over, that he'd gotten away with everything, that the sister who'd blocked him at every turn was finally, permanently gone. Then I sent the invitation. The meeting was scheduled for November 15th, 1 year and 1 month after the fire. The location, the foundation of our family home, cleared of debris, surveyed for new construction. The purpose, final walkthrough before closing on development plans. Travis thought he was meeting the new owner, signing easements, finalizing the last details of his escape from rural Montana. I was sitting in a camping chair when he arrived. The same chair my father had used for hunting trips, rescued from the barn before the fire, the fabric singed but functional. I was drinking coffee from a mug that had survived the blaze, white ceramic, world's best dad. A Father's Day gift from Travis and me 20 years ago, cracked but intact, washed from the ashes where I'd found it. Travis got out of his truck, saw me, froze. He didn't scream, didn't run. Just stood there, the color draining from his face, his hand still on the door handle, his mouth opening and closing like a fish in oxygen-depleted water. "You're late," I said. "Coffee's cold, but I can make more." He didn't move, couldn't. I watched him process, the impossibility, the implications, the sudden terrifying recalculation of everything he'd believed for 12 months. "You're dead," he finally whispered. "I was never very good at doing what you wanted, Travis. Remember, you wanted me to sell, I kept the farm. You wanted me to leave, I stayed. You wanted me to burn." I gestured at the foundation, the clean concrete where our kitchen had stood, where he'd poured gasoline and lit a match and watched me die. And here I am, still not doing what you want. He found his voice, or some version of it. I didn't. The fire was an accident, Rachel. The wiring, I told the police. You told them a lot of things, that you tried to save me, that you heard me screaming, that you broke windows, kicked doors, burned your hands on the doorknob. I set down my coffee, stood up, limped toward him. The ankle I'd injured jumping to the barn had never healed quite right, a permanent reminder of that night. I was in the barn, Travis. I watched you. You didn't try to save anyone. You stood in the driveway with your hands in your pockets and you watched. He stepped back. The first time in our lives I'd seen him retreat from me. You can't prove anything. It's been a year. There's no evidence. I don't need evidence, Travis. I don't need to prove anything to anyone. I stopped 10 feet from him, close enough to see the sweat on his upper lip, the tremor in his hands, the same hands that had held a lighter 16 years ago and a match 1 year ago. I own this land. I bought it from you, through intermediaries you never met. I hold your debts, the ones you thought were settled, the ones that have been accumulating interest in accounts you didn't know existed. And tomorrow, the Flathead County Sheriff's Office will receive an anonymous package. Bank records showing your withdrawals the day before the fire. Gas station receipts from the pump where you filled your cans. The phone call you made to your girlfriend at 2 a.m. telling her to expect good news. I smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. I'd practiced it in mirrors, the way I'd practiced everything else, the limp, the camping chair, the coffee mug. It's not enough to convict you, Travis, I know that. The evidence is circumstantial, the investigation cold, the coroner already ruled. But it's enough to investigate you. Enough to subpoena your records, question your associates, dig into every lie you've told for the past decade. And you, brother, have told so many lies, so many debts, so many people who'd love to see you fall. He was shaking now, visibly, the confident man who'd arrived to sign papers reduced to something smaller, more familiar. The Travis I'd known as a child, before the alcohol and the gambling and the rage. The boy who'd cried when our mother died, who'd held my hand at her funeral, who'd promised to take care of me before he learned that promises were just words you said to get what you wanted. What do you want? He asked. The question of the defeated, the desperate, the caught. I want you to understand, I said. That's all. I want you to stand on the ashes of our home and know that you didn't win, that you tried to kill me and I lived, that you tried to steal my inheritance and I took yours, that you spent a year celebrating my death while I spent a year becoming your landlord, your creditor, your ghost. I reached into my pocket, pulled out the deed, the title, the legal proof that I owned everything he'd tried to destroy. You can stay in Missoula. You can keep your condo, your truck, whatever's left after your creditors realize I own their markers now. Or you can run. To Canada maybe, Mexico, somewhere without extradition if you're worried about what the sheriff might find. I don't care. I've already taken everything that matters. I turned back to my chair, my coffee, my view of the mountains that had watched over 4 generations of my family. But if you ever come back to this land, my land, I'll have you arrested for trespassing. And if you ever tell anyone I'm alive, I'll release every document I have. Not to the police, to the people you owe, the ones who don't use lawyers. I sat down, picked up my mug, took a sip of cold coffee, the bitter taste of survival. Go away, Travis, you burned our home, you don't get to live in what's left. He left. Not immediately, he stood there for a full minute, shaking, crying, saying my name like a prayer or a curse. Then he got in his truck, reversed too fast, sprayed gravel across the foundation where our kitchen had been, and disappeared down the road that led to Missoula, to his condo, to whatever life he could scrape together from the ruins of his victory. I didn't watch him go. I drank my coffee and watched the mountains, the same view my father had watched, my grandfather, my great-grandfather. The land didn't care about our drama. The land endured. That was the lesson I'd learned in 12 months of ghosthood, of silence, of watching from shadows while my brother danced on my grave. The sheriff called 3 days later. Anonymous tip, they said. Documents suggesting arson in the Hartwell fire. They wanted to talk to Travis, but he disappeared, left his condo, abandoned his truck at the Canadian border, vanished into the kind of nowhere that only exists for people with too many secrets and too few options. I expressed shock. Grief. The appropriate responses of a sister who just learned her brother might have killed her. They were sympathetic, professional, ultimately helpless. Without a body, without my testimony, I was still officially dead. After all, the case would likely stall, become another cold file in a rural jurisdiction with too many crimes and too few resources. I didn't care about prosecution. I cared about possession. About sitting on my land in my chair, drinking from a cup that had survived fire, knowing that Travis would spend his life looking over his shoulder, waiting for the ghost he'd created to appear at his next job, his next home, his next attempt to start over. He called once, 6 months later. A number I didn't recognize, a voice I barely knew, thinner, older, broken in ways that might have moved me if I hadn't been broken first. "Why didn't you just kill me?" he asked. No greeting, no preamble. The question he'd probably been asking himself since that morning on the foundation. "Because you would have died a victim," I said. "Because the world would have felt sorry for you, the brother who tried to save his sister, the grieving man who lost everything. Because fire is fast and forgettable, and I wanted you to remember. I wanted you to live with the knowledge that you failed, that I'm alive, that you own nothing, not even your own story." He was quiet for a long time. "Then, I'm in Alberta, working construction, living in a room above a bar. I dream about you, Rachel, about the fire, about you burning." "I don't dream about you," I said. "I sleep fine, because I didn't try to kill anyone, because the fire didn't destroy me, it just cleared away everything that wasn't mine." "Will you ever forgive me?" I thought about it. Really thought about it, the way I'd thought about everything since that October night. Forgiveness isn't a gift you give someone else, Travis. It's a gift you give yourself, and I'm not ready to give it yet. Maybe not ever, but I'm also not carrying hate. Hate is heavy, and I've spent enough years carrying weight that wasn't mine. I hung up. Didn't block the number, didn't save it. Just let it exist, unanswered like so many other things in my life. I built a house on the foundation. Smaller than the original, 1 bedroom, a kitchen that opens to the living room, a porch facing the mountains. I did most of the work myself, between shifts at the fire station where I'd returned, my death certificate quietly corrected, my identity restored through legal processes that took another year and enough lawyer fees to make me wince. The department welcomed me back. Suspiciously, at first, they'd attended my memorial service, collected money for a plaque, told stories about my bravery. Then, gradually, as I explained partially, carefully, that I'd been injured in the fire, disoriented, wandered away, suffered amnesia, recovered slowly in a remote cabin. Not true but plausible enough. People want to believe in survival stories. They want to believe that their colleagues are heroes who beat impossible odds. I let them believe it. The truth that I'd hidden, plotted, manipulated my brother's destruction was mine alone. A private fire, burning quietly in the space where forgiveness might one day grow. I live in the house now. Sleep in the bedroom, cook in the kitchen, sit on the porch and watch the mountains turn pink at sunset. The mug, world's best dad, sits on my shelf, cracked, survivor of fire and ash and reconstruction. I don't drink from it anymore. It's a relic, a reminder, a piece of history that I choose to keep but not to use. Travis is still in Alberta, last I heard, or somewhere else. The calls stopped after that one and I stopped tracking him. He's alive, I assume. He's also irrelevant, which is worse than dead. Dead people are remembered. Irrelevant people are forgotten, and Travis spent his life wanting to be remembered, to matter, to be the center of the story. The story is mine now. The land, the house, the survival, the fire that burned away everything except what I chose to keep. I tell it sometimes to friends, to colleagues, to the occasional reporter who hears about the woman who came back from the dead. I tell it carefully, selectively, leaving out the parts that would make me sound like the villain of my own tale. But I know the whole truth. That I let my brother believe he'd killed me. That I watched from shadows while he celebrated. That I took everything from him, piece by piece, with the patience of someone who'd learned that fire is not the only way to destroy. I also know this. The night of the fire, standing in the barn with my burned feet and my broken ankle, watching Travis watch the flames, I felt something that scared me more than death. I felt capable. Capable of disappearing, of plotting, of becoming the ghost that haunted my own story. Capable of revenge so cold it burned hotter than any gasoline. That capability is still in me. I feel it sometimes, late at night, when the wind sounds like fire and the shadows move like memories. The knowledge that I could do it again if I had to. That survival is not noble, it's pragmatic, ruthless, willing to become whatever the moment requires. But I also feel something else, something that grew slowly in my year of ghosthood. The capability to rebuild. To sit on a porch and watch mountains. To drink coffee from a cracked mug and feel not vengeance but peace. To be alive, truly alive, in a way that Travis, with his fires and his threats and his desperate need to win, will never understand. That's my story. If someone has tried to burn your life down, hear me. Let them believe they've succeeded. Let them celebrate in the ashes. And while they're dancing, become the thing they fear most, the survivor they can't see, can't predict, can't destroy. I'm Rachel. I'm 35 now. I own 340 acres of Montana farmland, a house I built with my own hands, and a past that I survived by becoming someone I didn't know I could be. The fire didn't destroy me. It just burned away everything that wasn't mine. See you in the next story.